Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. NZ Post is removing services from 142 partner stores this year. It follows a long line of postal groups around the world scaling back as we enter a new era dominated by tech. The Czech Post closed 300 post office branches. The Greek postal service shut more than 200 last year. UK networks have gone through rolling waves of reductions, and Denmark has ended traditional letter delivery entirely, an end to a 400-year-old service. But how will the switch impact small-town communities and the elderly? Today on The Front Page, Age Concern New Zealand Chief Executive Karen Billings-Jensen is with us to take us through what this could mean for those who need these services the most. So Karen, how significant is this change for older New Zealanders?
I think it is significant for those that have relied on being able to access postal services and other services like bill paying and that in a more local community. So I guess we think of those for whom transport and travel distance is both difficult because of maybe a disability or the cost. So that's kind of one half. And then the other half is those who may not be digitally literate. And we just see this, we know that the figures of those over 65, I think there's 25% who are not digitally literate or online. And then for 75 plus, it increases to about 37%, and 85 plus will be even higher in terms of not being online. And yeah, so it just could create some real challenges with the kind of move to make more and more business done online.
Well, that's what I was going to say as well. It seems like you have to do everything online these days. And when you do go online, you're talking to a chat bot. I mean, it must be incredibly difficult for those who are not digitally literate.
Well, I guess there's a couple of things. So one is those who are not comfortable. I mean, they might know how to use technology to do some quite straightforward things that enhance their life, like FaceTiming grandchildren or talking to that. But there's a bit of a difference between using some complicated forms or needing to move through processes that might just take a bit longer in terms of your digital awareness. The other thing is connectivity. Not everyone is able to afford to be digital online, particularly on a very fixed budget. And then the cost of a smart device. We know that the 3G network is closing, which was, had some people on very basic phones. We know not everyone can afford a smartphone. So I guess it's the affordability issue of needing to be online, plus then those who are more confident. And we know there are plenty of older people who are really confident. We just know that there's some who struggle, particularly if you're not using it on a daily basis.
I don't know whether you've ever tried to teach a grandparent how to use FaceTime or Zoom, but I mean, even though they were really enthusiastic about it, it is still just that generational divide. You've just got to remember, hey, I grew up with this technology, or I grew up knowing how to use the internet, and it's all about, are there enough services out there who teach older people how to use this kind of technology, do you think?
Again, I want to be really clear that, a vast majority of older people have adapted to technology. They've adapted right through their whole life. So adapting to new things isn't a problem, and they do it. But some people don't have younger people that might be able to support them within the family. There are groups that, and we run a lot of digital literacy programs ourselves across the Age Concern Network, and other groups in the community. Libraries are a fantastic resource. But again, I think when we see local community options closing and some of the places that people might go to get support, so, and I guess that's looping back to the closure of some of these community postal services, is those people in a community that you might know because they're also your local dairy owner, or they're a small shop and it's part of what they do. So I think really, we always want there to be more investment in ensuring that the digital move doesn't leave people behind.
New Zealand Post reckons most people won't have to go more than 4 kilometres to find a New Zealand Post store. What do you make of this statement?
I guess some of the ones that we looked at, you could see that the 4 kilometres is fine. But some of the communities, I think just north of Wellington, Paikakariki, it's quite it's a 15-minute drive to either of the nearest post shops. That's more than 4 kilometres. I think some of the communities may not be well served and it might be really difficult. And for us in Wellington and other parts of the country where we know up the Kapiti coast, there is a greater number of older people who choose to retire slightly out of the city, closer to the beach, or a more relaxed lifestyle. So I think, some of the decisions about places where services are being disestablished was a bit of a surprise. So I think their comment was it's on average 4 kilometres. So I guess the challenge with on average is that we know there's some that are more.
East Coast town of Waipiro Bay feels that they've been betrayed and are confused by the post office closures, especially after years of loyalty. In Nellie Harrison's case, over half a century.
It'll be about that, yes.
Will you close that account now that the post office is closed here and go to another bank?
How will I get there? I can't manage it at my age and hardly walk. I don't know what I'll do.
Were you or any other organisations consulted in any meaningful way before this was all finalised?
I'm not aware. I would have thought that there would have been, the opportunity to seek feedback. We know that there was feedback sought regarding changes to mail delivery and mail services last year. And we recognise, as a business, they do need to look at their operating models. But I guess it is for us, it's thinking around these communities and places that are hubs of communities. And we know that banks are also moving more online. There's closure of branches, or has been over a number of years, or reduced hours. And so again, for many of us, online banking, online mail is what we do, and online use of forms. But for those who risk being left behind, we also know our population is ageing quite rapidly. And so we're going to see, and amongst the over 65s, one of the fastest growing groups is the over 85s. And we know that we want people to live at home and live in their community and age in place where they feel, connected as long as possible. So, it's how then do we ensure communities are set up to support people to do that.
And it's not only the physical act of going in and doing your bills and not being able to do them online, but it's that social interaction and that feeling of community, which is really important, because I know that loneliness is a real issue among our older citizens.
Yeah, definitely. And so, a reduced opportunity to leave your house, and to go out and connect with someone and just even have that interaction. And I know that's not would not be a driver for a business, but it's when I think that we think about our communities, how they're structured, what's our urban design like. If it is public transport that someone needs to get to services and it's public transport isn't there, or it's, we know there's amazing things like Gold Card that can reduce the cost of public transport during certain hours. But where there's not public transport options, and where then you might need to rely on someone else to do things on your behalf, we know that can also increase risk of elder abuse or, and loss of independence. Like, all of us want to be independent. So it is around all those things that I guess make up a community, how it's structured, what kind of public transport there is. Even if you are walking to slightly further to services, are there seats that you can sit down on and have a rest? It's really all those things that are part of what makes our communities livable as we age. I was just really surprised that there wasn't greater consultation around the impact on some of these communities. And in some cases, as we've seen the stories, some of these really small businesses, that this was a key piece of their operations, and then the risk that we might see closures of other services because it's a bit of everyone was kind of working. A mixture of activities for a small business was keeping it viable in the community.
Yeah, and definitely living independently and having those relationships are super important. I only thought of it actually in relation to my own popper. He goes and gets his hair cut every 2 weeks. He's got, maybe you could count them on two hands, the hairs on his head. But my mum explained it to me, and she said, no, when he goes into the hair salon, everyone says hello to him. He asks everyone how they are, and it is that whole community and that doing something and feeling connected to people. And she said, you have to go and see how they treat him. It's, it's so beautiful. And it's those little interactions, the people in those towns will know the names of whoever takes their bills for them, whoever takes their letters. And that's what's important. Do you think that maybe these kind of networks should be treated as a public infrastructure like your health, like your transport, instead of running purely on commercial viability?
I guess that's where we see the interaction of, big government, local government, where do things meet to, and we know with challenges for local councils, regional councils around services, things like libraries, community centres, the places where, as you talked about your pop-up, people go, and actually he'd be missed. So if he didn't turn up into every fortnight, someone might reach out and say, is he okay? So it is those connections. I guess it's hard to say for a business, that you have a corporate responsibility to community. But we know actually our communities thrive when business, and we see plenty of examples around the country where business works well with council, works well with government, and it's a coherent community that comes together. And I think we see, through the sheer number of volunteers in our communities, which often are also largely older people who are keeping some of the things running, like the toy library, like the Meals on Wheels, if there's those available in your community, the volunteer drivers for, Cancer Society, or, supporting people to connect and to get places. So we just know that all those things, everybody working together, supports a whole community.
So the dairy or the shop won't close, of course.
That's absolutely correct.
But your services taken out of them cuts a lot of their revenue out because they get customers coming who buy other things.
We do acknowledge that this is a change for some of our partners. And look, we're no stranger to change. For New Zealand Post, we've been going through a massive change with the significant declines in mail and huge growth in e-commerce and parcel. So our business is really shifting towards parcel sending.
Wouldn't it be lovely, though, if the corporate world did care about those at the bottom like that? I
think they do. I mean, I'm not about begging the community because they do so much, and they do things through sponsorship, through their staff giving back.
True,
and the people that are behind a counter when you do go there, they care. Yeah. And they on that personal level. So it's really just saying, how does it all fit together, and how, particularly when there are challenges around, some of the impacts on our communities, around businesses, struggling with the cost of living, with their viability, the social fabric, and how people have responded in crisis. What we've seen on the East Coast, what we've seen at the Mount, and the volunteers that have come to care, and the way community have provided food, and that's us. And that's what our communities are like. I always think, where do we build the strength in peacetime? Where do we build the strength when it's not a crisis? That means our neighbourhoods hang together. And where do businesses continue to be supported to be part of it? So, yeah, I think there is so much good, but this was just makes us think about what our communities look like, and what are the things that we want to see in that, and how can everybody be brought along and not excluded, and the risks of some of these changes around reducing opportunities for older people who aren't online, who struggle to get 4 kilometres away from where they live, but could manage, 1 kilometre.
Are there any other services that you think are in the crosshairs at the moment?
I guess we know that there's just a lot of thinking around how services are delivered. We have seen a number of government departments really push that shift to online. I mean, one of the key things that we know post shops do is provide, I think it's called Kiwi Access, the card, the ID card. So if you have aged out of not having a passport anymore because you're not going to travel overseas, and if you no longer have a driver's license and you still need a form of identification, that was one of the key things that people were also using. So I guess it's like the old 18 plus card. So anyone over 18, it can provide that ID until you've got some other forms of ID. So we've got people growing into getting a driver's license. We've also got people exiting out of having a driver's license and having that photo ID. So I think it's all those things, and some of the services that, you can only apply online for certain things. I think it all just creates some barriers, and really we want to. So I guess our plea to government departments, to those who have a public service, be it councils or what, is think about those who not being online is a barrier.
I saw in Denmark, they have ended their traditional letter delivery entirely as of actually December 30. That's the end of a 400-year-old service. So what I'm suggesting is that why don't we all band together and send Christmas cards through the mail this year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the what we hear from New Zealand Post is, as a business, and we know that there's a reduction of letters. I mean, I think we got 3 Christmas cards at home this year when we used to get, many. I remember my parents probably having hundreds.
Oh, and stringing them up over the fireplace, all of them.
Yeah, and I think times have changed. Like many of us can, and do, of all ages, use our smartphones and email and other forms. So I think we need to recognise that the times are changing in terms of mail delivery, and we can't go back, but it's just ensuring that whatever is put in place, and I think New Zealand Post, their parcel service is way more, through Trade Me and, buying things online, those midnight purchases where you should really think about it before you press buy, that arrive. But we know that has become an increased part rather than bills. I mean, we do know, again, that some companies are saying we'll only give you an online bill. And so, again, for those who are online and can read it, really important. But again, it's thinking about where could there be still a service for those who aren't online? Then it puts someone else getting their bill and their personal information to help them. So I think it's all that. Yeah, I'm not sure that saving the postal service with the Christmas cards probably would work in the long term.
I'll back down on that crusade then.
Yeah, but I guess it is just, the challenge really is how do we make sure that we don't leave people behind? And, we have amazing groups that invest in supporting digital literacy. So, so that's one step. Dealing with the cost is another. And, if we're saying everything is online, should provision of internet be seen as an essential service? And should then that be part of what's built into those who are only reliant on either New Zealand Super or a work and income benefit? Should we say, actually, this is essential? If we're saying everyone's life is online, do we then need to say, so actually, when we talk about key things that you need to pay as, rates, electricity, and that is connectivity, does that then need to be factored in as something that's essential if we're saying online? And then we've got all our rural communities that struggle with connectivity anyway. So, I mean, there's bigger questions, but I think for me, ensuring that cost of connection isn't a barrier. If we're saying on one hand, it's really important that people are online and it's the efficient way and it's the way of the future, then let's not have barriers that stop people doing it, and let's support those who need help financially to be able to manage that, and just recognise the impacts that this closure will have on communities, that it will have on individuals, and how do we transition.
Thanks for joining us, Karen.
All good. Thank you for the opportunity.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is hosted and produced by me, Chelsea Daniels. Kane Dickey is our studio operator, Richard Martin, our producer and editor, and our executive producer is Jane Yee. Follow The Front Page on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for another look beyond the headlines.